Hello and welcome to Freedom Struggles. We're here with Arvind Narrain, who's going to be talking to us about the Alternative Law Forum, where he is a founding member. Arvind, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Arvind, in today's context, what is the role for an alternative law forum?
We began in 2000, and the idea was that we want to provide legal support for, broadly put, marginalized groups and communities. And 2000 to 2000, now it's 2012. And last 12 years, I think an NGO or a group which provides legal support to, broadly put, all forms of marginalized groups and communities, I think there still is a lack of enough lawyers. I think there's a sense in which we feel that we are overburdened. So obviously there's a need for more people doing more kinds of work. Because if you look at it one way, there might be a need, or there is a need for specializing in, say, for example, issues of, say, child sexual abuse. That's not an area we might not have done as much work in that area. Or, for example, slum demolitions. That's another completely different issue. Or it could be the entire issue of providing legal representation for under trial prisoners. That's another kind of an issue. Or you're talking about lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people's rights. That's another kind of issue. So there's a range of issues are there on which, we provide legal support. But our sense is it would also be incredibly far more effective if you're able to combine that legal support with also working in campaign and advocacy levels on these issues. And obviously we can't do that on all issues under the sun. We can do it on some issues. So, for example, something like the LGBT rights, we've been involved in the campaign, as well as we're a part of the legal work. Whereas other issues, we end up doing more of the legal work alone, because we can't obviously do everything under the sun. So I would think that, once again, maybe from our perspective, that it's very, very important that if you're an activist, to have some kind of a legal support in terms of legal. If you have a law degree, it makes a difference to your activist work itself. So I would think that there's world enough and space enough for 1,000 more organizations doing very similar or similar but different kinds of work.
I would understand from a more utopian vision of law in a democracy that a lot of the things that you're talking about should probably fall under the conventional law set, right? Is there a line in the current context that you can draw between conventional law in India today and alternative law, the work that you do?
Yeah, this is a question we've been asked often. What do you mean by the phrase alternative law forum? What is alternative about you? And I think our response has been 1 or 2 points. Firstly, we say we are alternative in terms of the fact that law is very closely linked to, obviously, capitalism. Law is very obviously closely linked to money. So a large number of people who do law end up basically servicing, you want to put it broadly, the wheels of global capitalism or national capitalism, as whatever way you phrase it. So there's a link between law and power, and law and money, and law and capitalism in the broadest sense. And so in a sense, the point we're trying to make is, when we say alternative, we try and focus on where the law doesn't normally focus, which is on the rights of marginalized groups and communities. There's no necessarily link of the law to these groups and communities. There's no necessarily link of lawyers, shall we say, rather than law. Law is obviously linked to everybody under the sun, but we don't have enough lawyers doing this kind of work. To give you a simple example, if you look at the interpretation of the Income Tax Act, every single comma, and literally I tell you, every comma and full stop has been subject to interpretation. Whereas look at the Juvenile Justice Act, you don't have the same degree of interpretation of that entire law itself. It's not to say children's rights are less important or juvenile justice is a less important issue, but it's more to say that we have more people practicing IT law, income tax law. So obviously you have the law which is more developed in that area as compared to the area where it should be developed. And you look at, more broadly put, look at when people say there's too much of public interest litigation in the Supreme Court, look at the statistics and figures. You'll find that it's a very, very, very minuscule percentage of the total number of cases the court deals with, and a large majority of these cases are to do with corporate clients. So that would be one clear case of alternative. And sorry, it's a long-winded answer, but the second part of the answer is also, I think many lawyers have the sense that the law provides all the answers to a social justice related struggle or an issue, whereas we've been often very critical of the role of law. So we think that the law should work with other means of activism, other ways of mobilizing, and other strategies as well. And sometimes law is not the answer. And so we need to be clear on that. You shouldn't have the lawyer's arrogance of thinking law is the answer to all problems in the world. You need to have that thinking that there are alternatives to law. So that will be two parts to the answer. Yeah.
So Arvind, you were talking to me about the line between sort of conventional law and alternative law. Could you tell me a little bit about, do you see yourself, Arvind, the ALF, working within the framework of law though? Do you see yourself as part of that system?
I think sometimes we see ourselves as part of the system, sometimes we see ourselves as outside the system. So it really depends on what the issue or the case might be. You have to be within the system if you want to be effective within the system at all. I mean, you need to play by its rules, you need to understand its rules, you need to work within that framework. I mean, if the certain conventions which are there in terms of law, if you want a relief, you have to follow those conventions. It could be right from addressing the judges, my lord, or your honor, to the way you draft and to the language one uses in a courtroom process. So those are all ways in which you have to be within the system. I don't think there's space for empty radicalism there, because if you want a relief, you work towards getting that relief and you do what you can from within the framework of that. You're outside in the sense that you understand that there are certain limitations to what you can achieve through the legal framework. You're very conscious that only a certain amount you can push the entire boundaries of the law, and for some reliefs you'll look outside the framework of law.
One of the things that ALF has sort of stood for, or one of the statements that they've made, is that the law is inherently political in a way, sort of built in this larger context. Could you tell me a little bit about how ALF started, and what was the mission then, and where do you find yourselves now?
When we were students in the National Law School, the entire idea was that we should have, the idea we were told is that law is an instrument of social engineering. And I think some of us like that idea of law as an instrument. I mean, now I wouldn't use the language instrument of social engineering anymore, but the idea that law should be a tool for social transformation, or law should be used for emancipatory purposes, would be something I would still obviously subscribe to. And at that time we were also, because of the law school syllabus, where you had the entire thing of doing internships with social organizations, we'd go out and interact with various social organizations and groups, and so from there the idea was born, with conversational groups like Samvada, that we need a space like a lawyering group based in Bangalore, and that's how the idea really emerged.
We talked a little bit about this interview, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about more. You had these opportunities to do a lot of other things, right? You're immensely qualified, you did very well in law school, you are obviously very articulate, very well read. There has to be this pull for other work, right? And a lot of your other classmates, a lot of your other colleagues are doing this other work that are making 100 times more than you are. Do you consider this a sacrifice, what you're doing?
No, I don't think I consider it a sacrifice, because I think we do what we do because we like doing what we do, and I wouldn't give up this for anything in the world. So this is a choice which I made of doing work which I really enjoy doing. So I think somewhere you just say that I do what is important to me, and that's really my starting point. So no, I've never seen it as a sacrifice actually.
One of the lines that I read, the tagline for ALF was lawyering for change, right? So what kind of change do you want in your utopian society 10, 15, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now? What change can we see take place?
Well, I mean, many things I would imagine. I mean, one is, I think there's a question of inequality of income. I think it's a very inequality in general, right? It's a very powerful, very important contradiction in Indian society today, and that really would need to be resolved. Just the other day we were part of this tribunal on garment workers, and the living wage of a garment worker today in Bangalore for working 12 hours a day, 8 to 12 hours a day, it would be 5,000 rupees. And you just think about that, 5,000 rupees, who can make a living in the city? I mean, you go out within the middle class setting, people go out for dinner, they'll spend 2,000 rupees on dinner, 3,000 rupees on dinner. So it's appalling. And then on the other hand, you have people who earn lakhs maybe a month. So that's like, I think, absolutely fundamental issue which should be resolved. I mean, everybody should have a basic minimum as far as earning capacity, as far as earning is concerned itself.
And do you see the law having a part to play in bringing about that equality?
Sure, of course. In a very specific way, if you look at the entire law on taxation, would you not argue for one would be progressive taxation, would not argue for a way in which, for example, social uh, social benefits are provided to those at the margins of society. Would not argue for something, an expansion of, for example, national rural employment guarantee as far as the urban poor are concerned. So if you take care of food, clothing, shelter as far as poor people are concerned, that's a great starting point. So yeah, the law has a powerful role to play in this entire thing. But of course, the law cannot do anything unless there is a political climate which allows that law to work or to be implemented in that sense. So that's a wider social transformation one is talking about, right? A change in societal mindsets and attitudes, and a sensitivity, and that might be a wider, almost a revolutionary change one we're talking about to bring about that kind of equality. But that's economic equality for sure, right? I mean, equality, once again, you don't mean in the sense of everybody should have the same income. That's not really the point. But surely we can't have such huge disparities. That's surely unacceptable, even in the framework of capitalism. That would be the simple point I'd make. But on the also the social inequalities would be the other aspect of it, and that's something which is, I guess, much more difficult, in some ways more difficult, because you're talking about levels of prejudice which is there in every human being, as it were. Prejudice with respect to gender, prejudice with respect to caste, prejudice with respect to religion, and prejudice with respect to disability and sexuality. These would be some categories on which discrimination really works. So obviously, I mean, if you ask for an ideal society, ideal world, there will be no discrimination on any of these grounds. That will be clearly the ideal. So.
You talked very eloquently of how much you enjoyed working here at the LF, but there must be some challenges, right? What are some of the struggles you face on a day-to-day basis with regards to working here, or with regards to the work that you do?
See, I think once again the strengths, right, are that you're with a bunch of people who are very inspired, and they're very passionate, and so they give a certain amount of energy, I think, to you, even in moments when you could be a little low, because you get a sense of energy from somebody else who's just so driven, so passionate about the work that they are doing. So I think the challenges would be that, of course, I mean, sometimes, I mean, you might have an idea which you think will work, but it might be an idea which it takes its time, right? Ideas have that time. I mean, they don't always emerge into the sunlight at the same moment. Sometimes you just need to, the idea needs to be worked at more individually, or maybe more in terms of putting it together, maybe writing about it, or maybe creating a certain public climate around it, maybe having a little bit of patience. I think that the key thing you learn is you need to have patience, and change is not going to happen tomorrow. As we're talking about lawyering for change, change is something which is going to happen, but you need to work towards it with a level of patience and commitment. You can't have a sense of, if it's not happening tomorrow, I give up and leave. That can't be your attitude. You need to know that you're in this for the long run, on the long haul, and that things take the time. So,
but for you personally, no regrets with regards to the LF?
No, there's no question of regrets. No.